She didn't flinch when he made the joke. She just stood up, walked to the piano in front of the entire school, and without saying a word, she played like she was telling the world everything it had refused to hear. By the time her fingers left the keys, the room wasn't laughing anymore, it was holding its breath. It was one of those school assemblies no one really wanted to be at, not the students, not the teachers, and certainly not the janitor who leaned against the bleachers in the back pretending to sweep while secretly scrolling on his phone. The gym at Lincoln Hills Middle School in Dayton, Ohio, smelled like rubber soles and popcorn grease from last night's volleyball game. The folding chairs creaked every time someone shifted, and the ancient PA system kept crackling like it had bronchitis. On the stage, pacing back and forth like he was auditioning for a role nobody wrote, was Principal Terrence Brock. Early 60s, khakis just a bit too tight, thinning gray hair trying its best to cling to the sides of his head. He was the kind of man who loved calling himself hip, which only made things worse. He clutched the microphone like it was a lifeline and spoke with the forced excitement of a man trying to hold a room that had long since checked out. "Okay, folks," he said with a chuckle, "so while our tech crew figures out why the Bluetooth hates us today, let's keep things grooving. Maybe we get a little impromptu performance." He scanned the front row like a game show host looking for a volunteer. His gaze landed on a girl sitting quietly near the edge. "How about our new student? Amira, right?" He squinted down at his clipboard. "Yeah. Maybe you can give us a little jazz concert?" There was a ripple of laughter, light and sharp, the kind that stings more because it's not loud. Some of the kids turned to look at her, not with interest, but with that teenage brand of amused curiosity, like watching someone get called out in class. Amira Wilson didn't blink. She sat still, her hoodie sleeves pulled over her hands, two long braids resting over her shoulders. She had been at Lincoln Hills for only 2 weeks. 13 years old, new to town, transferred from Detroit after her mom got a job at the VA hospital. No one really knew her yet. And honestly, she liked it that way. She kept to herself, ate lunch alone, and always carried a weathered black notebook in her backpack, the kind with bent corners and pages full of things she never read aloud. No one had ever heard her play music. Not here. But some students had seen her sketching piano keys across the desk with her fingers when she thought no one was looking. Principal Brock grinned, assuming his joke had landed. "Come on, a little something to jazz up the moment," he added, winking as if he hadn't just shoved someone under a spotlight they never asked for. More chuckles followed, a couple of them mean. One boy muttered, "Watch her actually do it," with a smirk. But Amira didn't react. She just looked down at her hands. Her breathing slowed. And then, without speaking, without looking up, she stood. The room shifted. There was something about the way she moved. Not nervous. Not bold. Just steady. Like she was walking to a place she already knew. Principal Brock's smile twitched, confused now, unsure whether the joke was still funny. "Oh," he said into the mic, you don't have to," but Amira was already climbing the steps to the stage. Already sitting at the dusty school piano no one had touched in months. Already cracking her knuckles softly before placing her hands on the keys. She didn't look at the crowd. Didn't look at Brock. Didn't announce what she was going to play. And then she pressed down the first note. It wasn't a clean, rehearsed school recital kind of sound. It was low. Dragging. Almost hesitant. Like memory. Like grief trying to take form. Students stopped whispering. The squeaks of folding chairs faded. Even the janitor paused mid-swipe. Amira's fingers moved with the quiet urgency of someone telling the truth. The melody she played didn't belong to any known sheet music. She had written it herself, weeks earlier, in a room filled with silence and sorrow after her brother Malik had been killed in a crossfire back in Detroit. She never talked about it, not even to her mom, but the music knew. The music remembered. The notes climbed slowly, then crashed, loud and overlapping like shouted arguments and broken dreams. Bits of gospel, blues, and something that sounded like a hymn wove together into something bigger than the gym could hold. A girl in the front row stopped chewing gum. A boy in the back slowly lowered his phone that he had been recording with, no longer filming, just watching. Miss Carter, the English teacher, put her hand over her heart. And Principal Brock? He sat down. Hard. His microphone, still on, dropped a soft metallic thud into the speakers as he leaned forward, elbows on knees, stunned. Amira didn't stop. Not when her fingers shook. Not when her eyes glossed with tears. She played like someone who didn't care if the world was watching or not. Her pain didn't need their permission. It only needed a place to speak. And right now, the keys were her voice. Every phrase told a story the room had never heard out loud, about what it feels like to be looked at but not seen, about being black and quiet and constantly underestimated, about carrying weight you didn't ask for in spaces that never welcomed your truth. She played like someone finally cutting through the noise with something real. And the room listened. Truly listened. When she finally struck the last note, a soft, echoing hum that lingered in the air longer than it had any right to, no one moved. No one clapped. Because they couldn't. Not yet. The silence that followed felt sacred. Thick. Like if anyone breathed too loud, it would break. Amira sat still. Her hands dropped into her lap. Her sleeves were damp from wiping her face. And then, without a bow, without a word, she stood. Walked off stage. Down the steps. Back to her seat. She didn't look left or right. She just sat down. Like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't just flipped the entire room on its head. Miss Carter sniffled quietly. A few teachers exchanged glances. One kid whispered, "Yo." That was it. Just yo. But it carried weight. A beat later, someone clapped. Then another. And then the wave of it rushed in, loud, rolling, full of something more than applause. Respect. Awe. Understanding. Principal Brock stood slowly, adjusting the mic. For once, he had nothing clever to say. His voice cracked slightly when he finally muttered, "Thank you, Amira." That was powerful. And that was all he could manage. The choir didn't perform that day. Nobody cared. There was nothing left to say. Amira's music had already said it all. The applause didn't end all at once. It faded in waves, like ripples spreading from a dropped stone, until the room returned to that same strange stillness it had known before Amira played, but it wasn't the same silence anymore. Something had shifted. There were no more giggles. No more side eyes. Just glances filled with a kind of uncomfortable reverence, like the crowd was still processing what had just happened. Amira sat quietly in her chair again, her eyes on the gym floor, sleeves still tugged over her hands, acting like she hadn't just upended the emotional balance of an entire middle school with 10 fingers and a melody. No one knew what to say to her. So they didn't. Not then. But by the time the final bell rang that afternoon, the shift had begun. In the cafeteria, a few students who never said a word to her before paused when walking by her table. They didn't say anything this time either, but they paused. That alone felt loud. On the bus ride home, someone whispered, "That piano thing, that was crazy," just loud enough for her to hear. But Amira didn't react. She just looked out the window like nothing had happened, the sun catching the corner of her eye, her reflection flickering faintly in the glass. She didn't need their words. She didn't play for attention. She played because she had to. Because there were things in her chest that refused to stay silent anymore. Still, the internet had no such hesitations. By the time she got home, someone had already posted a grainy video from the back of the gym, captioned, "This girl just ended the entire school with one song, flushed face musical keyboard #Lincoln Hills #viral." That video hit Instagram Explorer before dinner time. By bedtime, TikTok had latched onto it, stitching it with reaction videos of open-mouthed teens and dramatic rewatches set to slow-motion effects. One user wrote, "Wait, this is middle school? Bro, I thought I was watching a movie trailer." On Reddit, someone reposted it under a thread titled "When the Quiet Kid Isn't Just Quiet, She's Legendary." The likes rolled in. Comments flooded. And still, Amira said nothing. She didn't repost. Didn't comment. She didn't even open the notifications. She turned off her phone. She spent the evening in her room, curled beside her keyboard with the lid closed, breathing slowly, like she was trying to hold onto the moment without letting it overwhelm her. But outside her room, the school was buzzing. Monday morning came fast, and with it came stares, different than before. Not pitying. Not mocking. Something in between curiosity and caution. A student she barely knew from science class offered her a donut hole before first period. A teacher in the hallway said, "Beautiful performance, Amira," with a kind smile, though her voice shook like she wasn't used to talking about feelings in public. Amira nodded politely, said thank you, and kept walking. Meanwhile, Principal Terrence Brock was doing the opposite. Avoiding. Not just her, but everyone. He didn't mention her name over the morning announcements. Didn't reference what had happened in the gym. He carried on with his clipboard and awkward hallway hellos like it never occurred. But it had. And the students noticed. The teachers noticed too. Miss Carter gave him a look during lunch duty that could have melted steel. Mr. Ellis from math whispered, "You gonna say something, or we just pretending this didn't happen?" But Brock just smiled that same nervous, tight-lipped smile he always used when his jokes didn't land, and shuffled away. The thing is, you can't stop a wave once it starts rolling. By Tuesday, the clip had reached a local radio station's morning show. The hosts played the audio, adding, "Y'all, this kid poured her soul into that gym and left everybody speechless." That same day, a local arts education nonprofit shared the video with the caption, "This is what happens when we stop talking over kids and start listening." At school, the buzz grew harder to contain. Students kept replaying the video at lunch. Someone printed out a blurry screenshot of Amira mid-performance and taped it to a locker with the words "Queen Behavior" in pink gel pen. And still, nothing from Brock. Until Wednesday. That morning, students were called to another assembly. No one knew why. The rumor mill spun fast. Was it another performance? Was Amira getting an award? Was she in trouble for going viral? But when they filed into the gym and saw the district superintendent, Ms. Renee Langston, standing at the side of the stage in a sharp gray blazer with her arms folded and expression set like stone, the mood changed. Principal Brock looked like he hadn't slept in days. He cleared his throat into the mic. It crackled. He stepped back. Tried again. "Good morning, Lincoln Hills," he said, voice wobbling slightly. I'd like to take a moment to address something that happened last Friday." The room quieted, just like it had the first time. Only this time, no one was restless. No one shifted. Every eye was fixed on the man at the mic. Brock swallowed. "Last week, during our assembly, I made a comment. A joke, really. A bad one." He paused, breathing like each word took effort. It was directed at one of our students, Amira Wilson. I said something that I thought was lighthearted. But I've come to understand that my words were rooted in assumptions. And those assumptions were harmful. Silence. No applause. No whispers. Just wait. "I want to publicly apologize," he continued, voice cracking just slightly, "to Amira. And not just to her, but to every student who's ever felt unseen. Or unheard. Or turned into a punchline." His eyes scanned the crowd. Amira sat near the middle. Hoodie on. Head down. He kept talking. "This school is supposed to be a place of growth and respect. A place where your voice matters. And I failed to live up to that. I'm sorry. And I will do better." He stepped back. The mic whined. Ms. Langston didn't clap. She nodded. Once. And then stepped forward. "We've all seen the video," she said calmly, "and we've all felt what it meant. Not just the music, But that moment was truth. And truth has power. Her words landed like a slow drumbeat. Let's not forget that. Not today. Not ever. That was it. No long speeches. No awards. No grand gestures. Just truth. When the assembly ended, the students filed out in relative silence. Some talked quietly. Most didn't. But they all glanced at Amira differently. Not with pity. Not with awe. With respect. Quiet, solid respect. That afternoon, she found a note tucked inside her locker, unsigned. It read, "You didn't just play the piano. You played the truth." And though no one saw her smile, she did. Just barely. Because she hadn't asked to be a voice. She hadn't played to be remembered. But now, people were finally listening. And something inside her, something gentle and firm, knew this was only the beginning. That unsigned note in Amira's locker didn't come with a name, a doodle, or even a heart drawn in pen, but it didn't need to. The words were enough. You didn't just play the piano. You played the truth. She folded the paper carefully, slower than she needed to, and tucked it into the back pocket of her music notebook, right behind the page that still held the smudged pencil outlines of the melody she'd played that Friday morning. The one that had cracked the walls of Lincoln Hills Middle School wide open. The one that turned silence into something sacred. Over the next few days, the clip of that moment spread far beyond the halls of Lincoln Hills. The shaky phone video, uploaded by a student who hadn't even meant to capture anything profound, was reshared over and over again. On TikTok, the clip was used as the background for thousands of duets, some teens reacting with their hands over their mouths, others adding their own soft piano overlays, like a chorus echoing back to her. Instagram reels lit up with captions like, "I felt every note she played, and this isn't just talent, it's truth." A local news anchor picked it up by the weekend, calling it a hauntingly honest moment from a 13-year-old who spoke without words. And still, Amira didn't post. Didn't speak. Not online. Not in the interviews she was asked to do. She just kept walking the same quiet halls, showing up to the same sixth-period math class, and spending her lunch in the back corner of the cafeteria with her headphones in and notebook open. But something had shifted. This time, the quiet wasn't isolating. It was chosen. Powerful. Respectful. Students who used to pass her like she was invisible now gave small nods. One girl dropped a note in her lap during study hall, "Your music made me cry." In a good way. Even teachers seemed changed. Mr. Gaines, who never remembered anyone's name right, now greeted her with a gentle, "Good morning, Amira." Miss Carter, the English teacher who'd put her hand over her heart during the performance, pulled Amira aside one afternoon and simply said, "I heard every word you didn't say. Thank you." But perhaps the biggest shift came from the adults outside of the school. Parents, lots of them, started calling the school board. Some sent emails. Others showed up at meetings, demanding the district address not just what had happened with Principal Brock's joke, but the larger pattern it represented. If she hadn't gotten up and played, one parent said at a Tuesday night board meeting, would that comment have been brushed off like every other microaggression these kids deal with? Another parent said, "We're applauding her now because she stunned us." But why wasn't she respected before she ever touched those piano keys? The pressure built. The board listened. And then, they reached out. On a gray Thursday morning, Amira was called into the main office. The secretary, Mrs. Langston, greeted her kindly, like someone who already knew why she was there but wouldn't say it out loud. "The district board would like to invite you to speak, and if you're willing, to perform again," she said. "Next Monday night. At the district headquarters. It's optional, of course." Amira blinked. Perform again? Speak? She hadn't expected that. She hadn't asked for it. She didn't even know if she wanted it. She nodded slowly, murmured, "I'll think about it," and left the office with her thoughts spinning. That night at home, she told her mom. Mrs. Wilson paused while stirring a pot of spaghetti on the stove, then wiped her hands and sat across from Amira at the small kitchen table. "Baby, you don't have to say yes to anything," she said. "You already said more than enough that day. You moved people." Amira nodded, chewing the inside of her cheek. "I know," she whispered. "But maybe this time. I want to say something. Not just play." Her mom smiled, proud but quiet, and said only one thing, "Then say it." Over the weekend, Amira worked on something new. She didn't touch the old piece. That one had said what it needed to say. Instead, she started fresh. A slower composition at first, but brighter. Still soulful, still honest, but gentler. Hopeful. She wrote in layers, call and response phrases, like a conversation with herself. She added a dissonant chord halfway through, a sharp moment that held tension, then slowly resolved it, like breathing through pain. It wasn't a song about loss. It was a song about resilience. On Monday night, the district boardroom was packed. Folding chairs lined the walls. Some parents stood in the back. Students came too, not just from Lincoln Hills, but from other schools across the district who had seen the video. Cameras from local media outlets lined the far side of the room. The energy felt electric but reverent. When Amira entered, hair freshly braided, keyboard tucked under her arm, people quieted. Not out of awkwardness. Out of anticipation. She sat at a small table at the front of the room. A board member introduced her with a few brief words, but no one needed a reminder of who she was. Then Amira stepped up to the microphone. She took a breath. The kind that pulls everything inside into stillness. "Hi," she said, voice quiet but clear. "My name is Amira Wilson. I'm 13. I go to Lincoln Hills." She paused. "When I played at the assembly, I wasn't trying to go viral. I didn't play because I wanted people to notice me. I played because someone turned me into a joke, and I didn't know how else to speak." The room leaned in. Sometimes people like me, quiet girls, black girls, new girls, we're only noticed when someone's laughing. But music doesn't lie. It's not afraid of silence. It tells the truth even when no one's ready to hear it. She paused again, longer this time. "That day, I played the pain I carried. But today, I want to play something else. Not because the pain is gone, but because I believe there's more after it. There's something better." She sat down, placed her hands on the keyboard, and began to play. This time, the notes were soft but confident. The melody lifted slowly, like morning sun through blinds. The chords told a story of survival, of walking through hurt and still standing. A small major shift here. A gospel echo there. One hand pulsing like a heartbeat, the other dancing like a memory. People in the room stilled completely. Some closed their eyes. One teacher wiped a tear. And when it ended, there was no pause. The applause came instantly. Full, thunderous, alive. And still, Amira didn't smile big. She just gave a small nod, stood up, and walked back to her seat. She didn't need the ovation. She had already given them everything. That night, the district board voted unanimously to approve a new initiative, a student-led creative arts and storytelling program across all middle schools. A space where students could express their voices through music, poetry, visual art, and more. Amira was asked to help shape it. She declined the spotlight. But she agreed to help build it. Because this story wasn't just about one girl at one piano and one awkward assembly. It was about what happens when you stop laughing long enough to listen. The next day at Lincoln Hills, the halls felt different. Not louder. Not flashier. Just more aware. Students stopped using words like weird so easily. Teachers started listening more before assuming. And Amira? She still sat in the back of the cafeteria, notebook open. But now, students joined her. Quiet ones. Dreamers. Kids who hadn't had the right moment to speak yet. And when they asked her what it felt like to change everything with one song, she only shrugged and said, "I just played what was already in me." Because sometimes, transformation doesn't start with a speech. It starts with a sound, a truth, a single note that refuses to be ignored. Sometimes the most powerful voices in the room come from those who never intended to speak. Amira didn't plan to change anyone's mind. She didn't stand up to prove a point or win an argument. She simply told the truth, with music, with courage, and with everything she had buried in her heart. And in doing so, she reminded us all of something vital: our truth matters, even when the world tries to ignore it. We live in a world where people are often too quick to judge, too ready to laugh, and too slow to listen. It's easy to look at someone who's quiet, different, or unfamiliar and assume they have nothing to say. But stories like Amira's break that illusion wide open. They challenge us to stop, to reflect, and to ask ourselves, who have we overlooked? Who have we underestimated? To every young person watching or listening, especially those who feel invisible, mocked, or unheard, this story is for you. You don't need a microphone to speak your truth. You don't need applause to know your worth. Whether your voice is found in words, music, movement, or stillness, it matters. Let no one reduce you to a punchline. Your presence alone is powerful. Your perspective has weight. And the moment you decide to show the world who you really are, that's when everything begins to change. To the adults, teachers, leaders, and parents, remember that your words carry more weight than you may ever realize. One careless joke can dim a child's confidence. One quiet act of listening can ignite it. Choose to be the one who believes. Choose to be the one who sees beyond the surface. At U.S. Justice Story, we tell these stories not just to move you, but to move something in you. If Amira's journey inspired you, share it with someone who needs a reminder that the quietest voice can carry the loudest truth. Let this be a moment we carry forward, not one we leave behind. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for believing in stories that matter. We'll keep telling them, for the unheard, the overlooked, and the ones still waiting for their moment to be seen.